Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Warm greetings to you all. This is Ms. Parker coming to you, and we are going to discuss three major concepts today in this video, in this lecture. And please excuse the lighting. I'm not sure what's really going on. However, we are going to discuss outlines, MLA format, and plagiarism. Three very key things that we need to know as we move forward to creating our speech presentations. We will be watching multiple clips that will further provide information and understanding of all three of those concepts. So we won't delay, we'll go straight into the clips.
Whew. Okay, so this video we're going to talk about how to write an outline. When I first started teaching high school, I was so surprised at how many students were confused at what an outline was. I would say, all right, I need you to write an outline. They're like, great, we know what an outline is. And then they would start like making a bubble web. They're like, see, this is what we do. It's like, no, that's not an outline at all. That's brainstorming. And they're like, okay. And so I would teach them how to outline. Outlining is not the same as brainstorming. Brainstorming is so important, right? It's the step where you figure out what your ideas are. So important. Outlining is when you take your ideas and you put them in order. And by putting them in order, you're figuring out what you're going to focus on and what you're not going to focus on. You're also going to figure out what your big ideas are and how your ideas arrange and work and match together so that you can say what you want to say. So many people skip over this step because they're like, man, no one's going to see. How's the teacher going to know? It's so boring, takes extra time, it's too much work. What they don't get is that this will save you time. It will make a better paper, whatever it is you're writing. It's going to be better because you took time to figure out what you were going to say before you said it. Let's go. Let's talk about how to write an outline. You've probably seen something like this. Today we're going to learn how to write a 5-paragraph essay. Great, we know that one, we've got to have our introduction. Introduction. 2, you're going to have the body where you talk about stuff. And then 3, you're going to have your conclusion. Great, I did all 3 of those. Now I'm ready to write a paper. Maybe you could do a little bit more. Make it better? Yeah? This isn't bad, it's just, it could be better. So, I'm going to show you 2 kinds of outlines. One is good, and then maybe later in the semester we'll get better. 1. Oh, this sounds familiar. I wrote introduction. Yes, you do want to start with an introduction because you want to make sure whatever it is you're talking about, that the people you're talking to are on the same page with you. They know what you're talking about, so you're going to give them everything they need to know so that they can understand you. Make sense? The kinds of things you put in your introduction are, well, you set it up, right? If you're talking about a problem, set up. If you're talking about a problem, you're going to explain the problem. But what you're doing is you're building up to what you have to say, which is your thesis. It's the main point that you're trying to make. Your thesis is your main idea. And it probably needs to look something like this. It uses this formula, topic plus comment. What does that look like? Well, you identify the topic, then you make a comment about it. This is really important. You have to make a comment or else people are like, what? It's the so what question that people will automatically say. If you're reading something for entertainment, that's the so what, right? Why am I doing this? What's the reason for it? Oh, well, I'm interested in the story. Great. I ask so what, and the answer is, oh, it'll be fun. Great. But when you're writing an essay, your job is to make a point. It's to be maybe persuasive or informative. And as you make that point, you get to tell them the so what. This is why they should care about your paper. The comment has to be debatable. It has to be something that someone could disagree with. Because if you're saying something that no one disagrees with, you're bordering on a fact instead of a comment. And you can interpret facts differently, but you don't really debate them. And it's kind of like, well, so what? Why'd you tell me this fact? Is this what I had to read this for? No. So let me give you an example. This is what I always say. Here's two examples between a fact and a debatable thesis statement. On Sunday, December 7th, 1941, the Empire of Japan attacked the American Navy at Pearl Harbor. That's a fact, right? It's a very specific fact, but it's not debatable. You can't say, well, like, well, I don't think it really happened. No, it did. Like, we just have too much evidence saying, boom, it happened. It's also something that just about everybody knows, right? It happened. It's not something you argue in a paper. It's like, well, it really was a Sunday and it really was December 7th. No, that's not debatable. That's not an argument. What is an argument is if you say something like this. On December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked America at Pearl Harbor, and it could have been avoided. That's what makes it debatable. You've made a comment. You said the topic, which was everything about Pearl Harbor, and the comment was, and it could have been avoided. Now it's debatable. Now the rest of your paper is trying to prove that comment, which is why you need to know what your thesis is when you write a paper, because if you don't, what's your purpose? You don't know. Your purpose in an essay is to prove or to justify your thesis statement. I'm going to say that again. Your purpose in an essay is to prove or justify your thesis statement. So if you don't have a thesis statement, what are you trying to do? Make sense? Okay, so your introduction then is building up to your thesis. You're going to set up what people need to know so that they're ready to hear you make your point, and they're like, oh yeah, it's a good point, right? And then you follow it up with your body, which could be, 10 paragraphs, it could be 100 paragraphs, where you, bit by bit, you go back and you explain parts of your thesis, right? So if your thesis is, and there's 3 ways it could have been avoided, well, great. Now you know 3 parts to your essay. Part 1, 2, 3 is reason 1, 2, and 3. Make sense? So every single paragraph in your paper has to go back to proving the thesis statement. Why? Because that is the purpose of your paper. And if you're writing something that doesn't help you accomplish your purpose, why are you doing it? Okay, your conclusion on your essay is related back to the thesis as well. You're going to kind of summarize all the important things you just said. So everything that went into the body, you kind of say it again, only shorter. And then you remind them of what the thesis statement is. Why? Because the whole point of the paper is to prove that point. So what you're doing is you're basically closing your argument and saying, this is how I made my point. Make sense? Restate the thesis. Now if you've done this chicken scratch on the board, you introduced a topic, you said what you were going to say about it, you explained what you said with your thesis, then you summarized your evidence and you reminded them again what your point was. So at every step of the process, it goes back and it makes sense. That is what an outline can do for you. Just imagine how much easier writing the essay will be when you figured out all this before you start writing. Instead of like, you pick up your book and you're like, oh, I think I could write about this. And you just start writing. And then you write a sentence that maybe you really like. But if it doesn't help prove your thesis, which you may or may not know at this point, it doesn't belong. You write an outline to help you write a paper. So, make sense? Yes? No? Hopefully. If you have questions, let me know. If you don't, I guess we're good to go. So.
Okay. We just watched a video on what an outline is, and pretty thorough. We already discussed what thesis is back in September, so we already have information about that, and so this should just come together well. For our class, there will be many outlines that you will have to write. So I want to provide you another video that shows you how to do it. Like, what are those key things that you need to look out for when creating an outline? Check this out.
An outline is a tool to organize your thoughts about a topic or question. Like a graphic organizer, It helps you to visualize your ideas. But unlike graphic organizers, which can quickly become crowded when details or longer thoughts are added, outlines provide a flexibility that easily accommodates multiple main ideas and details, including quotations and longer explanations. An outline is in many ways like a first draft, but outlining helps us to think through the organization and flow of ideas before we go to the trouble of writing. By removing the burden of writing incomplete sentences, constructing effective paragraphs, using transitions, and so on, an outline lets you focus on just the organization of your ideas. For many writers, setting aside the time to outline before writing makes it more likely that your written essay has a structure that a reader will be able to easily follow. And of course, the better a reader can follow your ideas, the more likely it is that your writing will be successful at explaining whatever it is you're writing about. So how do you make an outline? Well, if you're familiar with outlines, you will have noticed that we just made one a moment ago. An outline uses the combination of labels and indentation to show how ideas are organized. First, Roman numerals are used to label the main ideas. Under each main idea, capital letters are indented one level and used to label the supporting ideas. The details or examples that back up each of these ideas are indented an additional line, labeled with a number, and placed under the supporting idea. Lastly, any additional information about a detail or example is indented one more level, labeled with a lowercase letter, and placed under the detail it refers to. Though it might look confusing if you're new to outlining, with a little practice, making one is rather quick and simple. Just remember, use both labels and indentation to show the relative importance of each idea and where it belongs in the structure of the paper. Ideas are labeled in Roman numerals, then capital letters, then numbers, and then lowercase letters to indicate their level of importance. Less important details are indented more so that they fall underneath the ideas they support. Together, this creates an easily readable map that organizes all of your ideas and details before you start writing. Now let's practice outlining by making an outline about something we already know, like the describe, relate, interpret process we introduced in the Looking at Art video. First, let's title this outline Looking at Art. The easy part in this case is the main ideas, because we already have them: describe, relate, and interpret. Let's start with describe and work our way down the outline. In the describe step, we are supposed to first answer the question, what do you see? So this is the first supporting idea. When answering this question, we're supposed to focus on all those elements of a work: color, line, shape, and so on. So these are the details. Now after answering the question, we're supposed to make a list. This is the second supporting idea, so we'll label it B and place it next. Now for the relate step. We're supposed to ask, how do the parts interact? So that will be our first supporting idea here. And we're supposed to focus on how the characters and forms are interacting and how the characters and setting are interacting. So we'll add those as our details. Then we're supposed to answer the question, where is your attention focused? But since that's a new question and not part of the question, how do the parts interact, we'll make that a new supporting idea. Since we don't have any details to put under it, we can move on to our next main idea. And this is the interpret step. Here we're supposed to ask, what are the characters doing? So we'll go ahead and make that our first supporting idea. And because we're supposed to tell a story as part of that question, we'll make tell a story a detail. Then we're also supposed to ask the question, what does the artist want us to understand or feel? Since that's a new question, we'll make that a new supporting idea. And that's it. That's our outline of the describe, relate, interpret process. We didn't have to write full sentences, we didn't have to worry about making paragraphs or using correct grammar. All we had to do was worry about structure. And now we have a map that lays out the process for us. And if we wanted to, it would be really easy to write it out in full sentences and paragraphs, and we'd probably be clearer and more concise than if we had jumped straight into writing.
All right. So I don't want you to be overwhelmed with information. We are going to definitely practice with outlines and how to do them. And in Schoology, there is a purple resources folder, and I have added 2 different links on how to go through the process of creating an outline, specifically with how we will be doing so for our presentations. Also on the class website, tparkerdpscd.weebly.com, there's information in the resources section there as well. So don't fret. We're going to practice so that you're able to really have some weight under your belt and some time with working on outlines. The next clip we're going to watch is very quick in describing MLA format. Stay tuned for that one. All right, now in this video, there's one thing that I want to point out that was not quite right. Well, I'm not even gonna say not quite, it was incorrect. Here, you do have to set up a header on your paper with your last name and your page number. But this says make sure that it is on the left side. It belongs on the right side. So it's on the right side of the paper here, but they just, I guess, made a mistake and said left side. It's a very good video, but just wanted to make that one clarification. Now, I know that you have heard about plagiarism. You've heard the word plagiarism. I've even stated things about plagiarism. Academic dishonesty is cheating. And you can get in a lot of trouble. So most people just get zeros on their paper, but you can be written up. You can have some disciplinary action. As you grow your ranks as a student and a learner, if you go to a post-secondary school, you can be kicked out. That means money that you have paid has now been taken from the institution and you will never get back, and that you will not be able to earn a degree at that institution, and it can follow you. So it's never okay to do any type of plagiarism. It's just worth it just to do the extra steps, which is really easy now because you have websites that will help you with creating your citations. So when you're doing a Works Cited page and you have to do in-text citations and things of that nature, there are websites that will help you to create those instead of doing it old school where you had to look at the manual and the handbook, write down all the information, which you should still do. Is a good practice so that you remember what you're researching and what you're using. But creating the citations and knowing exactly what's supposed to be italicized, where the period goes, where the comma is, all of that stuff, you won't have to worry about. But I want to ensure that you have, and I make sure that I do my due diligence so that you have an understanding of what plagiarism is. So we're going to watch this 2-minute clip. And as usual, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Thank you.
Plagiarism occurs when one person presents another person's work as his or her own. Plagiarism includes presenting ideas that are not considered to be common knowledge and not citing the source. Canada is the second largest country in the world, is considered common knowledge. Most people know this without research. It does not need to be cited. The fact that Canada's Aboriginal population makes up 4.3% of the total Canadian population is not common knowledge. It contains specific information found through research. It should be cited. This information came from Statistics Canada. Cutting and pasting text or ideas from websites without citing the source, whether this occurs during assessments or on the final exam. If you use ideas or words from a website or print text, you must provide references to show where the original ideas came from. Handing in another student's work and presenting it as your own. Using another person's words or ideas, accidentally or deliberately, without giving that author credit through referencing is plagiarism. Referencing sources demonstrates your respect for the work that others have put into developing ideas or writing texts. Making use of researched materials also indicates that you have done an investigation, in addition to stating your own arguments, and have sought evidence to reinforce your claims. Your goal is to present your own words and ideas, and to give credit to others when you use theirs.
All right. So there we have it, just a little bit more information about plagiarism. All right. Okay, now you've made it through 3 major concepts. What is an outline, creating an outline, as well as knowing what MLA format is and plagiarism. So now, time to just stretch. All right, we had a lot to take in. But now we are going to have just a little laughter so that we can also have a greater understanding about plagiarism. So watch the Saturday Night Live clip and then we will wrap up. So I hope that this quick video, which I know it doesn't seem quick, but it was very informative, a lot of information and concepts covered with creating an outline and what is an outline, as well as MLA format and plagiarism. I also would like to share with you at this moment my Works Cited that includes the videos from this presentation today. And so it's always important to make sure that you cite your sources, you give credit to where credit's due, because you will want the same for you. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me at any time. We have the chat, we have the email, you have the website that you can also contact me with. Again, there are resources available, so if you need more assistance or need to see another video, that is available for you. We will practice some of these things and also have an assessment in regard to today's presentation. Thank you so much for your time. Have an excellent day.